Welcome everyone to Pitch Lab, a podcast meets pitch series powered by Friends of Pata. This is a space where next generation of founders building something early stage come together with experienced entrepreneurs to test ideas, receive feedback, and talk honestly about what it really takes to start building something. Not just the wins, but the uncertainty, the pressure, the mistakes, the decisions, and everything in between. I'm Valentina, and I'll be moderating this conversation today. Some of you know me because I'm the project lead behind Friends of Pata, and I'm especially excited for this episode because it reflects exactly what we want Season 2 to become: more human, more practical, and more honest. Today I'm joined by Marta Bernardino from Portugal, co-founder of Trovador, building autonomous reforestation robots for degraded and hard-to-reach terrain, and by Živil Ainikite from Lithuania, host of Perception Paradox, international MC, moderator, and someone who has spent years shaping conversations around founders, resilience, and human-centric technology. Thank you so much for being here and joining me. So let's start with the core. Marta, our dearest next generation of founder, can you please let us know what are you building?
So basically, I grew up playing in the forests, and when you grow up there as your biggest playground, one of the things you end up experiencing is from day to night, they go from green to gray. And there's not much you can do. At the time, I just started wondering why so many areas was just left untouched years and years after wildfires or deforestation in general, which is a really big problem in Portugal. And basically, all over Europe, in Portugal especially, our forests are mostly in these hazardous remote locations where a lot of people just get injured. But like we're in the 21st century, so I was like, there must be technology to solve this. And what I found out was that the best technology out there, they're called seeding drones. They just fly everywhere, they drop seeds from the sky. About 99% of those seeds actually never germinate. They either get washed away or they rot on the floor. So I wanted to do something about this. I wanted to bring back my country's forest, my playground. So at 17, I built the first version of Troubadour with a vision of building this all autonomous robot that could plant in slopes of up to 45 degrees, planting 200 trees per hour, and achieving this 85% survival rates long term. The way we do this is in actually like three simple steps. So we're building this app where we can draw in a map where we want to reforest, literally just drawing. It sends a trajectory to the robot and it starts planting. And then by any location remotely, we can monitor the progress of that plantation. Right now, we're basically targeting and going to markets, preferring customers that are already tree planting organizations and manage large scale funds and large scale projects, as well as a lot of landowners. So basically, we just provide this service. And currently, we're basically charging per tree. We have this quotation model of about 55 cents per tree that we plant, which is not only up to 10 times cheaper than manual planting, as it is up to 4 times cheaper than drone seeding, which is our biggest competitor. As of now, we're the first in the world, which is kind of crazy to even say, to ever use this technology for this industry or this ecosystem. We have deployed our second prototype in 2025. It was such a big accomplishment for us. We planted about 1,000 trees, and we overcome all of the previous benchmarks that the first prototype had achieved. Today, we're basically fundraising to develop this better version. So we want to deploy a bigger pilot this summer, this fall, with a few other partners and stakeholders, and truly ignite everything, all the KPIs that we're basically stating and the performance that we want to achieve. And therefore start our revenue model. We're currently pre-revenue. Right now, this mission has been carried by me and with Sebastian, who is one of my brightest teammates. He's the co-founder as well. And we're not just united by the passion of forest, but as well as the mission and what goes beyond the trees. Because one of the brightest things that we found is that there's a lot beyond just planting the trees, absorbing carbon, or restoring biodiversity. They filter water for our communities, they protect from landslides, floods, wildfires. They provide a lot of jobs, up to 16 million worldwide, and just overall, they boost our economies. So we're driven by this mission of making the world green again and be able to reforest where once was impossible. Thank you.
Ciao.
Woohoo!
Impressive. Impressive. 17 years old. Oh my God. I was like playing with my dog or something. Civil, darling, your time to feedback. Radical feedback, please. Straightforward. What stands out to you first? What feels clear? Anything felt unclear?
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me. Marta, first of all, congratulations and well done. Being at such a young age, seeing immediately the problem that has to be solved and caring about the environment and surroundings, that's very impressive. And I think one of the key things I love about new generation, that it's not about me, it's about us and the community and around us. Thing that stood out is this story coming from the personal experience, so that really kind of allow to connect and to catch the attention and to try to understand, aha, there was a real problem. It means that you saw it in real. And then if we're looking from the company building and scalability perspective, the questions I'm getting into my head, perhaps, I want to know more about the customer conversations. What are they telling? Like, what are you doing different than the competitors? So what's your actual mode? Because nowadays, some parts of the technology is pretty hard, can be pretty fast to either replicate. So that mode for me, I still would like to dive more into that. If there is any better funded competitor, for example, who could do it faster or not. And one more thing, you mentioned at the end, the co-founder and the team. So I think it's always interesting to learn what is the dynamic between you and co-founder, and who is also behind building this solution. And final but not least, perhaps when we talk about the venture capital world, right? So how scalable it is, how fast can you go into break even, especially nowadays, right? If you're fundraising, you need to show the data and you need to show the numbers. That gives also the trust and credibility. But overall, like I feel like you have a very interesting solution, very great, and in high demand, I would say, area, and very, very impressive and big drive I can see from your eyes. So well done.
So from a comms perspective, the problem that is bringing back my playground, I think that phrase is really catchy. Like it was full of catchy phrases that kept me in the loop. But I would agree with Sivi that I was missing a little bit more towards the end with the information that you have, which is the go-to-market strategy, a little bit more details on the business model, maybe, just to validate all this like super impressive story with a little bit of estimated at least traction. I think that would have done it a little bit stronger and less on the story, but on the real, like adding a little bit more real data to make it even better.
And sharing how big is the market. I think it's something that we all want to know all the time, from the customer perspective and from the investor, from any different stakeholder.
I feel your excitement. It's so cool. Congrats.
Same, that's
Absolutely.
incredible.
It's an amazing concept. Yeah, absolutely. Now that we understand a little bit more about the company, let's rewind a bit and understand the people behind it. So, Sivi, looking back at your early days, what did building your own path actually feel like versus how it may have looked from the outside?
Oh, I think that's a very good question. It depends how back are we going.
Let's say when you started.
Perception.
Well, you can choose when you started the perception or when you were like 25, 20 years old, like starting your business career.
All right, so how it looked like, I guess, from the side, it always looked that it's very easy and very flawless, and oh, you make it look so easy. Oh, it's where do you have this courage? And I was like, I have no idea where did I have the courage. It's sometimes the drive is bigger than the fear. But I guess from outside, and it doesn't matter if it was 10 years ago or now, it always look very easy, very light, that you somehow have more hours maybe in the day. But what I would say how it felt different because the challenges are always there. But when I just started, I feel that I didn't really know the separation between doing things and strategically systemizing and designing things in order to get to the from A to B. I feel like when we're starting out, we tend to think that building is being busy and being always occupied and being 24/7 on and like always hustling. Especially I'm coming from a very hustling environment. We're in the Baltics. We kind of grew up of having this extra mile and going for it. So that really can put you in the wrong loop that causes this misexpectation that busy equal productive or strategic. So I would say if we look back when I was in my early 20s, I did not know how to differentiate and how to prioritize. So the busy would take over rather than strategic work. And whereas right now, I definitely see myself being way more selective and systemic the way I approach work. So that would be maybe what has changed. From outside, perhaps, yeah, I think from outside it looks maybe I'm just working on either bigger projects or everything becoming even more unclear because I'm on a kind of everywhere on the global level. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
And such a great answer. I loved your phrase on drive is bigger than fear. And I actually also was double thinking of moderating because I always like being backstage. And I like this is not a place where I feel too comfortable, like you, that you're like the rock star. But like, yeah, I think a very important takeaway for early stage founders is just do it with fear. If you have fear, like go for it even more. And I relate a lot with this hustler Baltic cultural thing that you were talking about because I'm come from Chile, and it's the same. Like we were like a race to be better, and if you go to Europe, you need to be the best one and give the extra mile all the time. And sometimes you can get lost with all like having too many things to do. And I will ask you after the further down today our chat about how do you manage this priority setting, because I think this is very relevant for our audience. And Marta, dear, what is something about your early journey, since you're very young but you have been doing business for like I don't know how many years now, that's crazy, about your early journey that people don't actually see?
I was listening to Javil, and I was relating to a lot of things in a way, but in a way it was also very, very different. So the background I come from, I wouldn't say it's a very hustle culture. Not to say that people are lazy or anything, but I think a lot of people just find their comfort and in a lot of more simple things in life, and success is usually not seen as ambitious. And I've always had this like huge, I guess, hunger to just go further than anyone would tell me. Like if I was told no, I just feel like I had to do it. Like I had to go even further, especially if people said it was hard. And I remember pretty much always having to sort of debate this in my head, because for me to be convicting about convicted about a certain decision I wanted to take, some radical decision, let's say, I had to be portrayed as very confident. So I guess from the outside, I was always, again, seeing like everything was easy, like everything, I was brave and whatever. I always stand for my opinions and my wills very firmly. But I guess I remember a lot from the inside. It was not just scary, but also just very ambiguous in general. I think I took a lot of decisions that a lot of teenagers would never or would have a really hard time to take. And a lot of friends that also maybe took the same decisions. I remember like having this type of conversation. So, for example, during high school, I canceled a lot of the like subjects just so I could work on my company. And I mean, who comes from the countryside decides to work on a tech startup? What's a tech startup even? Like, what was that? And cancels classes just to have time for that, you know? And even I really wanted to like go and study abroad, because I don't know, if there was this really bright college that was teaching these really bright things, I wanted to go there. I wanted to have all of that knowledge. But for that, I needed to, of course, take very radical decisions, prepare myself in a very radical way, because everything was super different and really actually inaccessible. But at the same time, it was just like very confusing, and I had to just take a lot of decisions that were honestly very hard and compromise on so many things. But again, I couldn't really show how insecure I was. So I guess that was always like a very big debate from how much can I portray the way I'm feeling and all of that anxiety and everything. But at the same time, this hunger that just kept me going and chasing these big goals. I don't know. But yeah, in a way, I would say it was pretty much like this.
What's the biggest thing if you can pick one you think you compromised?
Um, I think
Fun?
a lot like fun time. Like I think I spent a lot of time just working and researching and learning. I learned a lot of things in robotics that I guess just the level of math that was being taught at school and the level of math I had to teach myself
That's
to
crazy.
learn those things. I remember just being like, I think I should just be and go to the beach and just like enjoy something. But I wasn't. Um and
Wow,
yeah,
your drive. I'm so proud of you. Look where you are today. That's awesome. So, thank you so much. Now, I want to move into one of the biggest challenges behind building early. How do you stay focused when everything feels urgent? I would like to know from Marta, how do you define when something is actually ready?
I would say the biggest goal really is to in readiness wise is really to be able to distribute a product very easily and seamlessly. And just to tie it back to the initial question you asked in terms of like building early and all of that pressure, I feel like there's a lot of hype into just getting a company to like a unicorn. Like I think that's all of the fluff words that go online and all of those things, and just launching MVP and then getting a bunch of customers early on and blah 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 blah. But I would say that's actually the case of 1% of the startups. A lot of business models or products, they just don't work like that. And a lot of people feel the pressure of having the same hype. Like if you're not going into this podcast and saying, "Oh, I got like $1 billion like evaluation, or I have this amount of early customers or wait list, whatever," like you just feel like your product is not as good in pitches. Like it definitely, you feel the pressure of people thinking, "Oh, that one is much better just because they have this," but you're actually going just pretty fine on your journey because it's a completely different thing. And I do see a lot of people, especially my age, because we're all on LinkedIn and like Twitter and all those things, chasing products that are very easy to be hyped, and they don't end up making something that makes sense, that is on its own, has its own journey, and is going through its own path. So yeah, I guess that this is like a big issue right now with a lot of, that's why we see so much like AI startups and building all over the same APIs and all over the same products, and not so many things that actually add value to communities and people.
Very interesting. And CV, GV, sorry. So, based on this, what Marta is saying about this pressure, where do you see people rushing too early, or what can you answer to Marta from your experience?
Well, I think that really depends. Where are you building what you're building? Like deep tech and SaaS, there are very different trajectories and what you should focus on. But I like Marta sharing that we got into this fuzz and bubble just that it's cool to be a founder and like, yeah, let's scale and build things that either do not create value or like it's so easy to replicate and there is no actual moat. So it's refreshing to hear someone being so dedicated and building such incredible things. Just before jumping into the timing and pressure, maybe from my perspective, so already it's connected with the previous question we were sharing a bit about how was it to start early and how was the journey and how was it for you, Marta, as well, like feeling that courage to do things and this curiosity was bigger than a fear to try and achieve. What I wanted to add here, that very often when we see all those success stories and everything, those who made it, we see only 1% of what actually has happened. So if someone goes to the unicorn in that decade or a bit less year, you don't see the nights they were guiding, you don't see what you had to sacrifice. And we kind of got this a bit fake image of building a company without putting an extra effort or without making a change. So, and as we all know, if you want to make a change, if you want to make something extraordinary, you have to create space for that. What does that mean? Either you sacrifice something and to really put your full focus 110%, 150 to be above others who are working on the same thing. And another thing, sacrification can be health, it can be relationship, it can be studies, fun time, you name it. We all have been there, or we're still doing that if you want to build something bigger. And this part is being forgotten. And as Marta mentioned, that creates some kind of pressure. But then when it comes to timing and pressure, what maybe I can complement, not from building a hardware, because I've never done that, but I have an opportunity to talk to people who've been doing that and be inspired, and big time respect for every entrepreneur who chose this way to solve that problem, is that in general in life, how do we apply that time and pressure? Because it's one thing to build technology, another thing is how do we make decisions, and how do you stick to the path and direction we created for ourselves. So what I've learned quite a long time ago now, that done is better than perfect. Back in the days, if I can say that, I recall that we would never launch a marketing campaign if it was not like ideal and perfect, and this communication strategy and this whole design page. Up until I remember the point, it was just before COVID, when I started really more actively building projects, creating different projects. It was more philanthropic, community-driven, educational programs, where one of my first mentors, and then she was a co-founder of one of the projects. She was like, okay, so this is the concept. Let's do this way, and just launch it. I'm like, launch it now without actual like huge validation and perfected design? No way. And then that was something that unlocked in me, and I've learned like, yeah, actually, you need but done is better than perfect. And then that's where the timing kind of pressure comes in, that sometimes you have to launch it and jump on the right timing. The pressure always comes from outside or from within. So whenever you know why you're doing things, then the pressure kind of calms down. So, but sometimes you need to accelerate as well for the timing. So there is no one golden rule. You have to read the environment, but I always say done is better than perfect. And also understand your battles and understand where you are building, creating. So yeah, that would be maybe a few takes.
Pick your battles. Yeah.
Always. You don't want to win all the battles.
It's impossible.
Exactly.
You need to pick your battles. Yeah, absolutely. I love this part of the conversation, really rich insights. And I just want to point out that we always wanted to build Friends of Bata and this podcast as a space for real conversation and what it really takes to start something, because so many podcasts out there and founders talking about how much money they're fundraising and like how successful they are and that they are unicorns, and this is exactly the opposite. Like we want the next generation of founders to understand what it really takes, and that you need a lot of courage, prioritizing, a little bit of fake it till you make it sometimes, but definitely this type of conversation is building towards that. So great. Thank you, girls, so much. So now I want to jump into the next part of the conversation, focus versus noise. So Marta, you said something really powerful when we talked the other day, that there are so many opportunities for you right now, so many events, invitations, podcast participations are, that you don't know what to select and what to let go. Actually, thanks for being here today. So how does that show up in your life? And like when everything feels like an opportunity, how do you decide what to ignore?
Mm-hmm. I think that's actually a very complicated question, and I remember molding it when we were in the call, and I don't think I have like a very structured answer for this, and really it depends on which stage you are and whatever makes sense for your life and your journey. But that's very, very true. I think right now, especially maybe for my generation, I'm assuming maybe for my generation it feels even more overwhelming, because we feel like, for example, for me, like I'm 20, it's like everyone says it's the age where all the opportunities are gonna open up, and you need to take every single one of them. You need to like just hustle and go everywhere and do everything that you dream of and blah blah blah. And honestly, with AI and all of these social media, I think I receive maybe or I see on feeds. It doesn't necessarily need to be like sent to me, but I just see them on my For You or on the feed of a random social media page. Opportunities of funding, opportunities of fellowships, opportunities to like apply to internships, go here, go there, and blah 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 blah. And I think as a young person, when you see people who took those opportunities and they share about their experience, they make all of those cool reels. There's so much FOMO around, and I definitely see that in a lot of my peers in university as well. I attend this university that's very focused for people who want to build businesses. So I'm really sure that my generation is just experiencing this FOMO 360 coming from everywhere and really want to be hyped up and share all these things online because you see other people being successful. And for me, I think that was a very big problem. But I guess what has worked for me is really grounding myself into what do I actually want to achieve in life, and all of a sudden it's not really like having these many awards and like having this many like fancy things on my curriculum for me. And this is always going to be a very personal answer for everyone. It's really like impact until I can say on my CV or whatever profile that I planted like 1 billion trees, I don't think I'll be happy. So I guess like that makes me much more chilled out to like make decisions and see, okay, is this actually going to help me? Is this going to help me in any other step that is in the middle, or is this just like some hype and I'm experiencing FOMO from a peer or from someone else? And I think it's going to get worse because honestly, like people want to increase accessibility to everyone else and get opportunities. And at the same time, it's not like social media is getting less and less booming. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really relevant topic right now.
I loved what you said, and it's actually very actionable because I think like where you win is that you have a very well defined vision that for you is impact.
100%.
Impact is your North Star, and you select and you do your priority setting based on your North Star. So I think that is a great takeaway. And just brackets, I read a lot of trend reports, and like the next generation, not of founders but the next generations are jumping into this new trend called JOMO, joy of missing out, exactly like to fight against this, that what we are talking about. And literally it's people like that like is looking for places of calm, music that is not so loud, like going to the park and doing nothing instead of going to big events. So JOMO, let's JOMO a little bit more. GB, darling, now it's your turn to talk about the prioritization.
About FOMO?
About JOMO, FOMO.
JOMO,
and
FOMO?
How do you manage to select and prioritize?
Where do I begin? That's a very good question, actually. I resonate a lot what Marta was saying, and perhaps that's something it was not clear for me fully in my early 20s. On the other hand, we all have our own paths and ways, right? As long as you have your why and your vision, it will be easier to make the decisions which opportunities to choose and to risk with your time and your energy to get where you want to get. In my case, that was a lot related with the tech events, startups, founders, innovation. And of course, the decision making is very different right now than I used to do that 10 years ago, but my intention and the needs are also different, and the stage where I am in my career and entrepreneurial journey. But what I would like maybe to add when it comes to prioritization and I would say also an involvement in the communities and the ecosystem, it's very easy to get isolated sometimes. I understand this FOMO, that we have lots of fear of missing out, and there are some of us who are trying to be everywhere, but we have to admit that we cannot be everywhere, and we need to be selective if we want to build something. We cannot just go and pitch all the time. However, not going anywhere, again, it can be also very dangerous, because then you kind of isolating yourself from other fellow-minded people, from entrepreneurs, from investors, from community. You kind of lose the sense and the touch point, what's happening, what are the opportunities and challenges, because at the end of the day, no matter what you're building, what we are creating, it's people business. It's all about the connection, right? And it's way more easier to continue the growth and to scale when you have some kind of support network. So it's a very slippery line. However, I will second Marta. Whenever you know your why and your focus and this kind of, I never say end goal, I would say a destination, because the end goal can always change. It's more like the peak you're climbing. Then it's easier to select where you're going to be, where you're going to skip, for whom you're going to say yes. I always like to remind myself as well that it's very much important also to look back and to remember where have you been a few years ago, where are you right now, and if there is someone who is a bit behind in the journey, always remember to give a hand as well. Not to sacrifice all your time, but just kind of pay it forward, right? Because there is always someone who is ahead of you, who usually gives a hand to make it easier for the steps. So that involves, again, into this prioritization, that clarifying, finding the space where do you want to spend your time. So it's important, but I see nowadays that younger generation missing lots of opportunities to gather, to connect, to socialize. And we switched it more to the digital world. So I would encourage everyone to rethink that human interaction is very important. It keeps us alive. Once you know where you're heading to, priorities are become way more clear. If you don't know it now, no worries. Try different things and try to see what made you fire up your heart, and then it will be easier to choose. But second, also, let's remember to enjoy the journey itself. It was really hard for me like 15 years ago to do that. I was so goal driven, and I really was in a loop, and I find many young people being in the loop of, I'm gonna be happy when I reach this and that goal. I'm gonna do this when I get there and there and there. No, 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 no. If we can, we should try to wake up and embrace, all right, so what this day has to offer to me? What will really make me satisfied with the results I want to achieve? To break it into smaller pieces. Why am I sharing that? Learn from my mistakes. It will help you to avoid this anxiety and overburdening yourself with big ambition, big goals that really feel so unachievable. But once you break it into smaller pieces, once you learn to appreciate those small successes, it's way more easier to enjoy the journey. So that would be those few bits and pretzels about the time and pressure.
Wow, love it. Thank you so much. Very inspiring. Also, I agree with you 100% about the importance, now that I'm older, of human connections, of feeling comfortable with yourself offline, of learning skills like pitching in front of an audience. Like it's very important in business, any type of business, that you know how to relate with humans, to read the body language of people, and that you can only learn by being physically with more people. And I also love what you were saying about sharing and giving a hand, because I feel in this entrepreneurial and business world we're living and talking about, there's so much ego, follow the money, goal driven characteristics in people, that I think a competitive advantage is to be nice, to be generous, to teach, to just share like what we're doing now with others, to grow, to help them grow. I think that is not a disadvantage. I think actually it's a competitive advantage in the world of business, to be open to share what you know, and you're just being transparent about your path. Moving into the next part, starting to close up without getting too emotional. I'm feeling attached to this conversation now. It's still I would say for me it has been a kind of a delicate topic, but it's more linked to our values and our perceptions and our roles in the business world. So Marta, you shared that in some meetings, even when you were the one presenting, people would respond only to your co-founder. How did that affect you at that time?
Yeah, well, that's a topic for sure. But yeah, for sure, it has happened when you have someone who looks like a man and someone who looks like a woman, and they definitely pay more attention to the men because for some reason they convey more expertise, I have no idea, especially when we're both the same age and we for sure look like kids, both of us. So, it is always like a very destructive feeling. I feel like it's not even from the point of view of I having like created the project uh when I was 17 and he joining later, but truly just why, right? Why when there's no one actually proving more expertise than the other one. And more than just speaking to someone and or not listening to someone else, I've encountered myself in a lot of situations, especially in networking events where men are just they either don't take you serious or they actually ask for things that are definitely not appropriate. And not just because I'm underage in a lot of countries, but also because we're in a professional environment. We're there to be professional, and I think it is always very frustrating and it sets you back because you're there just focused on your work, really trying to get your point across and actually take some value, add some value as well. And it really saddens me because I feel like in general, women, not just in technology, but a lot in business, and I would say in general in a lot of workforce jobs, they're just like always set back for a lot of prejudice that is most times invisible and not spoken about. I remember a lot like when I was starting and searching for mentors, for example, online. A lot of my mentors were always men, or actually, all of my mentors early on they were men. And I'm not saying that because women were not like available to be a mentor, but I guess, and this is obviously an assumption, but most likely because of the system, they were not put in positions where they either had the availability to be mentors or the expertise because they never got to that position, right? To even mentor someone else. And it always upset me to just see even women in positions of decision making and a lot of power just, for example, dressing as men or like getting their voice deeper. And I think I really missed seeing women showing up as women and being themselves. Everyone just showing up as themselves and not really having to portray more confidence or mimic someone else or mimic some other persona to actually get their point across. And I remember perfectly, I think last year I was going through a lot of networking events with my co-founder, and it got to this point where I was changing completely my behavior, like just because I really, we had stuff to get done. So you get into that zone, and it's almost like involuntary. And I remember getting really upset with myself, like, no, I want to show up as me and being true to myself and truly who I am, saying what I think, and work the way I want to work. And hopefully, I think if we truly embrace this one day, someone else, a younger girl or whoever, looks up at you and they're like, okay, this is who I want to become. And I really think it's an important topic, not to just discuss, but really to like spread the word because everyone needs to show up as themselves. Like we need to build a workforce that is for everyone, right? Um, and really thank you for like even getting a space to discuss about this because it is something that I see a lot, and it really saddens me because it's not fair, and it truly I don't think it's getting us more productive. Actually, I would say otherwise.
But I think we understanding a lot. I think it's more of us spreading the word. So like literally, maybe older generations get it. Sometimes I know, not sometimes, I very often I go to events or whatever, and I need to redress because I dress one time and I look at myself and I'm like, no, I look too hot. I cannot go like this because they won't respect me, or something like that. Like I need to redress in order to gain respect. So I think it's a crazy topic, but I think it's very important that we understand each other point of view and also key takeaways. Like how can we try to activate this and expand this knowledge, right? JV, have you experienced inequality or have you seen similar dynamics?
Where do I begin? I've seen it all. Yeah, I did the experience, of course. Like, I think it's not a surprise right now in the startup scene. We've been having really, really terrible data when it comes how much money is invested into the women, female founders. A few years ago, it was less than 1% in the Nordics. Right now, we have globally 3%, and in European level, I think it reaches already 12%, which is great. And first change that started happening right now with this capital allocation among founders and startups, obviously people speaking up and the research coming out there. Because before it was maybe that not really that known. But if we look into the venture capital world, the majority is still very male dominant. And what does that mean? That, well, as genders, we do think and make decisions a bit different way. So obviously we tend to select the path that feels most familiar, we feel most connected, and that kind of created a bit of a mismatch within the market. But I don't want to be like this very negative, and I understand the challenges, and it is very hard that female founders are underrepresented. But what I wanted to share from one of the latest reports, for example, even though female founders get less funding, but there's been a BSG report that found that female-founded startups generates 2.5 times more revenue per dollar invested than male-founded ones, for example. And then that female-founded companies outperform all male teams by 63% over 10 years. And that was found out by First Round Capital. So the performance is there, the capital allocation is still not there. I'm sorry, Marta, to hear that you had to change your behavior and the outfit going to in the pitches and talking with stakeholders and investors. It shouldn't be this way. And myself being a woman, and what you're saying, Valentina, about rethinking what am I going to wear. Well, it's always in my head. Am I gonna wear something that is more provocative or less provocative? Who is gonna be in the audience? Do I want them to listen to me, or do I want them to the audience to more approach the look? So, which is very uncomfortable to express that, but you think about these things because that's the reality. However, like, even though the situation with this fund allocations and this underfunding is not that good, it's getting better, because during the COVID, when I was co-founding Innovation Sprint focused on women entrepreneurs and how can we bring more women to entrepreneurship. If I remember it right, the data from the Nordics was that less than 1% of the capital allocated in the Nordics goes to the female founders. So that was really terrible. We now can see the numbers are increasing, and interesting things are happening in Finland. Finnish did quite some good things, that now 30% of the capital goes to the female funded startups. So that's a very big change. They're really pioneering that. If other countries picks that up, the speed, the change is going to happen. Another thing was very interesting from one of the reports was because we were mentioning about the outfit and appearance. It's not only about the outfit, but sometimes we still can see based on the research that men and women founders, they get different questions. So let's say men would get a question, how big can this grow? When a woman would more often receive a question, how will you not fail? What's going to happen when you have a baby? And like more of those soft side questions rather than hard questions. I don't know, Marta, maybe you can comment if you have experienced different questions going towards you and co-founder.
Yeah, 100%. Not even like about failing, like full on inappropriate questions. I've been in Dubai and I'm living in India, and I think across all these three cultures, and sometimes we have a lot of stereotypes about different cultures and we portray Europe as a very nice place, but actually the type of behavior was the same across these three cultures. We're talking about Middle East and Asia, which is impressive. I'm just thinking, and I don't even wear like very feminine clothes, and this is a very personal example, but if I leave this networking event just rethinking my entire outfit instead of thinking like of the nice conversations I had, insights I gained, how accessible is this? Like, we were just talking about two completely different perspectives of the same event, right? So I think this is super underestimated, and it just provokes a completely different chain of events towards these two type of people, right?
I think we could have like literally just spoken about this throughout the whole podcast. So maybe we'll do a follow-up. Because unfortunately we need to start wrapping up. The time is flying. But change needs to happen. It's a must. And I'm really glad
and it's happening.
It's happening. It's happening. And I'm very glad that we can contribute with our experience to help that and to put a spotlight in this topic. Let's jump into the last part of the conversation. Your mistakes, your lessons, and like just wrapping up. The questions are: what mistake taught you the most? And if you could give one piece of advice to someone starting today, what would it be?
I have something in mind, and I guess it also like answers both questions, and it actually touches upon a lot of topics that we've spoken about. When I was starting on this like weird journey that I didn't even know what it was, I guess I was pretty much trying to occupy a place that it was never meant to be mine. Like or at least it was never portrayed or painted that way. When you come from the countryside, like your family is not necessarily related to tech or like to a very hustle culture. A lot of the times I would find myself in environments, let's say, for example, of engineering people, like PhDs, masters, or people with just a bachelor, right? In the industry for years. And I was there just saying, I can build robots too, but I don't have any of those things. So a lot of the times I was just occupying these spaces and I had to prove that I belonged. I had a lot of the imposter syndrome, which I think it's like inevitable. I don't know how to pronounce this word, but sort of like that. So it's really impossible not to feel it. And I guess that prevented me from asking for help. And this is definitely like an advice I would give to people, like not never be afraid of asking for help, because those who truly belong there and really feel confident on belonging somewhere, they're the ones who are not afraid of asking for help. And I feel like there was just so many things that I had to figure out on myself on my own, and a lot of doubts that I had in my head, technical problems, or even decision making, prioritization, and even life questions that I had, right? I was trying to do something that I just didn't have a lot of like role models in front of me. So why not just reaching out for help? And a lot of times it was just like that fear of, oh, they'll see that I'm an actual imposter and maybe they'll just tell me, oh, you should just take a degree, and you'd know that. Like you if you go through the normal route and spend 15 years in an academic institution, you'll figure it out. Like I think this was a lot of the feeling that I had. And for anyone who's listening to this, and I guess they're trying to do something that is very different of whatever journey they're going through right now, just ask for help, because I truly feel like people are willing to help. A lot of the people I reached out to, they were super excited to just see someone so young to try something new. And whether you're young or not, I think just trying something new, that's just so brave, just so impressive. People want to join you and will want to help you. So whenever you feel like you belong or not, the advice I'd give is just like reach out, because you'll see you'll get much further and you'll explore many other things that you'd never even imagine you could. So yeah.
Reach out, do your homework, start doing networking, meet people on the real life. I think that is a great piece of advice. Thank you, dear. Yivi, it's time to wrap up the call with your learnings.
With the learnings, I love it. I can resonate with Marta about asking for help. I think it was too late. It took me quite some time to learn that. And the earlier you remove your ego and your crown and you become vulnerable, then the easier it is, I think, later on. So if you are in doubt, just ask. And just to add perhaps on what we've discussed, what Marta was mentioning, next to this ask for help and imposter syndrome, so the best way I would say to fight it is to own your story and own your direction, own your mission. And there will be always people who like it. There will be always people who don't like it. But if you don't like it yourself, nothing gonna move the needle. You have to like it, you have to own it, and to befriend the potential of failure, because whatever you're doing that is out of the comfort has an opportunity to fail. What's the best thing from failure? You learn, and you can always do the calculated risk. So two things. One of them would be, if you don't ask, you don't get. So it's not only about the help, it applies everything. We as human beings tend to have predefined assumptions that, oh, that's not going to work. Oh, they're not going to agree. You didn't ask. So that's number one. Have enough courage to ask. First of all, permission for yourself to build. And second of all, permission for others to help. Not permission, just ask to help. There is no need for permission. And second of all, if you really want to build something, if you feel like that's your way, and that entrepreneurship can go very different ways, not only venture-backed ways, do it, commit, know your why, but also identify your non-negotiables. Because it's not a linear path. If you want to reach that, you have to know what you have to give up for a moment. So we just heard a very great example of Marta, who has been very committed to her purpose, and she had to choose some things over the others. So known your non-negotiables, and all of us it can be very different. You don't necessarily have to sacrifice maybe the social life and so on. There are different ways to build, but know how to ask and know your non-negotiables.
That's awesome. Be true to yourself. Know what you want and what you don't want to begin with. That is an amazing way to wrap up this session. Thank you so much for joining. That's a wrap. If we can kind of summarize the key takeaways from today, first of all, showing up for yourself, being authentic. This is a competitive advantage over business ego and just purely following the money. Second of all, the importance of building a support system, showing up, going to physical events, learning maybe how to pitch or stand in front of an audience, like things that you don't normally do. Also, third point, you need to pick your battles smartly and move on. Done is better than perfect. The next point would be never being afraid to asking for help. If you don't ask, you don't get. Make sure to build a strong network of mentors you trust and ask them to guide you. And lastly, the big topic of courage. That drive is bigger than fear. If you know your North Star, if you know your vision, your mission in life and in business, it will be easier for you to prioritize and select opportunities in this world that is full of information and options. So, know your whys and your non-negotiables. And for everyone listening, if you want to support Marta and follow her journey, you'll have a chance to vote for her pitch as part of the Pitch Lab, because this is a podcast with a pitch. And after season 2 is over, all the founders who pitched will have a chance to win a special prize. The selected founder will receive 1,000 euros, access to mentors, and support through Let's AI Venture Factory to help strengthen and grow their current businesses.